loud. Somebody's in the car, and so don't worry. Don't you dare do anything.
Don't take notes.
Yeah, don't take notes, please.
Recording it.
Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. So Christina was interviewed on my favorite podcast. You know this podcast because I assigned you the positioning advantage last week. Doug Burdett elevated Christina's book, Sway, to a must read. If you're a marketer, this is one book you must read to succeed. There's a very limited number that make this special category. And I read the book, and I'm telling you, I know why. This grit method is absolutely beautiful. You're a marketer, you're starting your job. This is what you do. You follow this method to succeed. I'm not going to say any more. I said enough already. Christina, take it away.
Thank you. I've got plenty to say, so I will do that. Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I think it's always, this is why I wrote the book, was to really help people, anyone, understand what it means to be a marketer these days, and hopefully build the influence and trust you need to be really successful. And the sooner you can start doing this, the better, more fulfilling career you will have. So I'm super excited to be here and talking about it. I'm going to go through some slides. I don't need to make it super boring. It should be pretty fun and interactive. And then we're going to open it up to questions, and you can ask me, literally, you can ask me anything you want. So I will do my best to answer that. So a little bit about myself. I have been a marketing executive in Silicon Valley for the past almost 30 years now. I should probably update this, but that's okay. And I'm a go-to-market strategist, and I've worked with Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, and over probably about 50 startups now at this point. And it's really just came to my attention what was missing in marketing, not just in sort of some of the courses you guys are taking, but as people are in their careers, whether they're just starting out, mid-level careers, executives, there's just a lot of things that either we weren't taught, we weren't trained on, we weren't recognizing. And so what I really wanted to do was write a book that would help any marketing professional. The book is also really applicable who are in product and engineering and sales and customer success as well. So really everybody who's in business, I think there's some takeaways from the book itself. But I think the key thing really is just really understanding sort of what's going on. So some of this might sound kind of sad and disappointing, but I just want to let you guys know like what the current state of marketing is right now. And that really is that marketing professionals are a bit misunderstood. And we'll talk a little bit about that. A part of that has to do with the fact that the data that we have access to pretty much completely sucks. Just how it is. We're not collecting the right kinds of data. We don't have access to it. We can't look at it the right way. So, and then the final thing is that we in marketing are kind of seen as non-essential. And I don't know if you guys are actually working in marketing. And this is true for all aspects of marketing, whether you're in brand or content or demand or social media. People just don't know exactly what we do, so it's a little disarming. But it's one of those things where you have to recognize it so that we can then work on making it better, making ourselves a little more visible. Making sure that we're building that trust and building influence within the organization as well. So when I say we're misunderstood, what I really mean is, and Tom, you chime in as well. I know you have experience and you've talked to a lot of people and read a lot of books and stuff, but executives and leaders don't really understand the value that marketing professionals and marketing brings to the table. It's really hard for us to show our impact, show the attribution of the programs we're working on. I think brand is a great example, right? So if you think about brand, you're talking about your messaging and your visibility, your logos, how you're being portrayed in the marketplace, and how do you put a revenue on that? How can you say this is the ROI of this ad that we did, or things like that? And so it's a little confusing. Again, not just for executives and leaders of companies, but for marketers themselves. The other thing that marketing folks tend to do is we're super excited. We kind of geek out and are nerdy about marketing, and we oftentimes don't speak in terms that others recognize. We might use acronyms. We might assume that people will know what it is that we're doing. And so it's really important as you start your careers and as you go into things to start recognizing what other people are looking for from you and the terminology that they're using, the goals that they have, and how you as a marketer can help them get there and like really speak in those terms. The other thing, and I think this came out a lot with COVID in particular, is we need to have more empathy for people. It doesn't matter if you're in marketing right now, maybe you have, a job in food service, or, you're working somewhere on campus. The thing is if you need to understand that other people are going through their own issues right now, and they have their own concerns, they have their own goals. Maybe somebody has a midterm this week and it's sending them off emotionally or whatever. And then when you're in the working environment, there's things, whether it's personal or business related, that's impacting them. So you just need to sort of have a little more empathy as you're going into things. I talked about data. Data is your frenemy. You need data to show the impact you're having. But again, the data is really hard. It's hard to find. It's hard to track. Metrics are hard to track. It's hard to have consistency and cadence with everything. And then oftentimes we either don't, as marketers, don't have the right tools to collect the information, or we're not able to analyze it. And again, with brand in particular, it's really, really hard to get the data on the impact that your brand is having in some of the work that you might be doing if you're focused on brand. And this is even true if you're focused on lead gen or social media. I once did a press release, and somebody asked me like how much revenue the press release brought in, and there's no way to get data around that really. You can have anecdotal evidence and things like that, but otherwise it's really hard. And then the final kind of issue that marketers experience is that we're sort of this invisible core behind everything, and people sort of see us as non-essential. They don't know what we do. They don't really understand the value and impact that we have. And the other interesting thing that you'll find as you sort of launch into this career is that people think we're interchangeable. So you might be doing social media and somebody's like, hey, we need to do a brand awareness campaign, and why don't you do that? And it's like, oh, I kind of work on different things, but it's just one of those things where everybody thinks a marketer can do everything. And it's great if you have that sort of generalist background, but over time, you're going to want to sort of pick areas that you find are interesting to you. So again, that's kind of the current state of things. And that's really why I wrote my book, was to kind of get away from that and help marketers and marketing professionals really understand where they are now and how they can fix some of that. So I know I've talked a lot. I'm going to stop real quick and just see if there's any questions or any comments for now.
You can put them in the chat box if you don't want to take your mic off mute.
Oh yeah, you can do that. I can read too. So all right, so I'm going to go on and kind of talk about how I feel marketers should be doing things. And again, this kind of gets to what Tom was saying, like these are tactics that you can start putting into place right now. And that really has to do with becoming an influencer in your organization. It doesn't matter if it's your, if you're in a student group, or if you are, wherever you're working. It doesn't matter what level you're at, what your job is, what your role or title is. There's definitely ways that you can start influencing the way that either you're doing things, the company is doing things, and how you're actually looking and viewing the different programs that you're looking at towards your goals. The other thing too is that marketers often don't think about revenue. And at the end of the day, that really is what a marketer's job is to help the company reach their revenue goals. And again, whether that's through brand awareness, through social media campaigns, through lead gen, there's so many different ways that marketing is involved in that. And it's really important to understand what the revenue goal is and how you, again, regardless of your role, how you can help the company reach that revenue goal. And then the other component is what I call go-to-market strategy, and that the marketer needs to really own that. We're going to dig deep into that in a bit. But there's two sort of key components to my book. The first is what I call the grit marketing method, and I'll get into that. And then the second component is the map of influence that I'm hoping that people will start to build. And again, it doesn't matter, what you're, if you're in marketing, if you're in sales, if you are, whatever, designing dresses, doesn't matter. You need to figure out how you can influence everybody. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. But the grit marketing method, there's 4 pieces to it. And the first is that go-to-market strategy. And I don't know if you guys have talked about this or had classes on it. It's often something that we don't really sort of teach in school, unfortunately. It's something that we start learning when we start our careers. But basically what we want to think about is what the company as a whole is doing in alignment and collaborating with everybody else to make sure that the product or solution that you've developed is successful in the marketplace. And so having that go-to-market strategy is critical, and marketing playing a big role in that is really important. RPM stands for Repeatable, Predictable, and Measurable. I'm going to dig deeper into these as well. But I'll talk a little bit about that, because that's how you help your company reach their goals. And then intention, the I stands for intention. And that really is just being really intentional about everything you're doing. You're going to be asked to do a lot, especially as you're starting out. You're kind of going to get a lot of the maybe not so glamorous things, plus whatever it is you're doing on top of that. But I think that's one of the key things that I learned early on, is that you need to be able to say no to things in a nice way, and really just focus again on what it is that you are trying to do to reach your goals. And so that's what the intention is all about. And then tools and technology goes back to data. Like if you don't have the tools and technology to measure and to implement any of your programs, then it's going to be hard to sort of, again, prove your value in yourself. And start gaining that influence and trust. So again, these are kind of the key pieces. We'll dig a little deeper into them, but these are the main components of those. Tom, I don't know if you have anything to say, and I don't see any questions in the chat. So by the way, I'm going to give away an autographed copy of my book, Sway. So if I don't hear from you, then I don't know if you're interested in it. And so
students are very bashful, Christina.
yeah, I get it. They can type it in, and I'll read it.
Type in the chat. I mean,
it's all good.
Did you just offer an autographed copy of the book?
I'll start calling people out. Like I see Mitch right there. Mitch, do you have a question?
Not right now, but I'll let you know if I think of something.
Beautiful, love it. Okay, sorry, Mitch. You were the picture on my little Brady Bunch chart there. So awesome. So let's talk a little bit about go-to-market. In terms of go-to-market, it's really important for you to understand what your role is. And that seems kind of obvious, but what is your role in terms of how the company is going to reach their goals? That's what you really want to think about. So again, if you are responsible for brand strategy, for example, and maybe you're doing a refresh of your website, right? And so your role is to look at how people are perceiving you, what the target market is right now, who your audience is, what is resonating with them, like what colors, all of these things, right? And the key thing is that you want them to find your website and then be able to navigate through your website. So that's like your role, is making sure that those people find you, stay on your site, and are finding what they're looking at, because that's what's going to help you then get the leads that you need, nurture them, sell to them, and have that revenue. So understanding your role, again, really holistically as it relates to your company's objectives and your revenue is really key. The other thing is understanding, again, what that corporate strategy is. I've been in, again, whether it's Fortune 100 companies or startups, and sometimes our goals and objectives are different. So in some cases, I've been part of a fundraising series at companies, and what we're trying to do is not necessarily hit a revenue target, but hit a number of customers or brands target. So the revenue wasn't as critical as having named brands, and so it's a different strategy than just focusing on revenue, because we wanted specific customers and large customers. And so you really need to understand what that strategy is so that you can build your programs appropriately. And then the other thing is really defining and understanding that customer journey. I work a lot with what's called B2B, so business to business, less focused on sort of consumer products. And that customer journey is very different because a lot of times the product or solution is very expensive, like $50 million, and they're with you for like 3, 5, 10 years. Like when I was at Oracle, they were with us for about 10 years. And so you need to understand like who is involved in sort of that introduction of your offering, who's going to be the one who's going to be purchasing it, who's going to implement it, who's going to use it, who's going to be looking at it, those 3, 5, 10 years out. Because if you have an understanding of who those folks are and what they're looking for, just makes it easier for you to do your job. And from that, you align your strategy and again, involve everybody in the company. I think that's really critical. We often get siloed and that causes a lot of issues. So, so the other thing the book talks a lot about is what I call RPM. Apparently I was in an acronym kind of when I wrote the book, but it stands for Repeatable, Predictable, and Measurable. And why this is critical is if you have programs that are working, then instead of kind of recreating the wheel or making new campaigns or new programs or a new brand, you want to take what's working, but maybe repeat it or maybe sort of repurpose it, rework it. And so this is really critical because we don't have a lot of time, we don't have a lot of resources. And the more we can take something that's been working and sort of expand the life of it in a variety of ways, the better off you'll be. And you'll have that consistency in your messaging as you're going along as well. So generally I'll take what I call a pillar piece, whether it's a white paper or maybe a webinar. And then I'll break it down, I'll chunk it up into 10 different blog posts. And, it turns out to be like 100 different social media pieces of content. Or maybe I'll actually just repackage it and put a new cover on it for a different audience. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll have a case study that's pretty significant. And then because again, I have these different audiences as part of the sales process, I'll just take that, the outcomes and change them for whatever audience I'm looking at. So I might be talking to the IT person who's going to be implementing the product. And so in that sort of use cases area, I'll talk about things so they'll know that it's easy for them to implement, it's plug and play, whatever. And then if the CFO, who's the one who's going to write the check, is my audience, I'll talk a lot about ROI. And so again, there's no reason to write a case study for each of these different people in your customer journey. The key thing to think about is what information they're going to need in addition to sort of that general pillar piece again, and maybe just write a couple bullet points that are specific to them. The other thing that allows for is that predictability, because this piece of content, this program, this campaign, it works. And so just by continuing to use that, it'll make it a lot easier. One of the things that happens a lot in marketing is everybody thinks they're a marketer, for one, which is always fun. But you'll often get people who are like, well, why aren't we doing this? Or our competitors are doing this, or I saw this. I have who was a CEO when I was at OpSource, and I kid you not, he would walk into my office, he'd open the door and he'd start off with hey, I've got this great idea. And I was always like, oh, it's going to be a really bad idea. I know it is. But you kind of have to listen to them. But there's no reason to write as much content as you can. You want to be super smart about what it is that you're writing. When I was at Autodesk, we had our library contained 30,000 pieces just for this one department, and 30,000 pieces is, I don't know, 29,000 at least too many. So you just want to be really smart about it and leverage again what you have. And the other reason that makes it really important is because then it helps with that measurability. It helps with the metrics, because again, you're looking at fewer pieces and you have a better sense of what those pieces are. And that goes to the I in group, which is that intention, just being really intentional, being deliberate about what it is that you're creating, why you're creating it. Again, whether it's content, brand, programs, campaigns, a press release, whatever it is, because that is, again, you don't have as many resources as you need anyway. And so the more you can just be really intentional about everything you're doing. And again, that goes back to saying no. I had my team, I can't remember where I was, but I had them for a full week write down all of the interruptions that they had that was taking them away from actually doing their job, which was projects that I had them on that was going to help us meet our objectives and our goals and the strategy. And on average for a week, they had 200 interruptions, which is 40 interruptions a day for things that were not strategic. And again, I gave my team sort of the permission and buffered them to say no. But a lot of people don't have that ability. And so it's something that I think is important to sort of create. And again, you can always just say, well, is this going to help us get to our goal? Is this, part of our strategic plan? And if not, then, we need to think about where that fits and where that makes sense. But that, 200 interruptions a week it's crazy. And it's just not going to help the company reach those goals at the end of the day. And then finally, tools and technology. This is something, again, we don't really get into when we are in school, but it's something that becomes really critical because, again, this is where you're going to be able to have those metrics, get the data. And one thing that I think you'll find when you start working is you're going to come into a situation and these tools and technology are already going to exist. So you're going to have to learn it. And whether it's, a marketing automation system like a Marketo or a CRM like Salesforce, and they all work differently together. And so you really need to think about what it is that you're trying to do and what it is the information you're trying to extract from these to make sure that you're getting what you need. And these systems, unfortunately, they're often implemented by other people and like years earlier, and they're never really iterated on. And so if you're not getting what you need from them, try to see how you can influence both the technology and the way that those workflows are being implemented so that you can actually get out of these tools what you need. Otherwise, again, they're kind of not as effective as they could be. So that is the grit marketing method. Here we go. Here's some questions. This is great. Says, do you face any issues being a woman in marketing? Yes, absolutely. I think what I found and my initial audience for my book really is women, but just people who need to figure out how to build that trust, how to build that influence. Oftentimes, I call it having a seat at the table, and it doesn't matter like if it's a boardroom table or it doesn't really matter which table it is. But you really do, anybody needs to prove themselves. And so we're going to talk a little bit about building that influence. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I'm a strong person. I'm a strong woman. I think one of the lessons I learned later on and wish I'd learned earlier is that nobody's going to empower you. It doesn't matter if you're male, female, it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to empower you. You really need to empower yourself. I mean, don't be a jerk or anything like that. But if you feel empowered to do your job, which is really critical, then and you have confidence in your abilities, then you'll start building that trust and that influence, and that is key. But yeah, I've been in situations where people, just by the nature of being female, they don't have as much respect. At least initially. Again, I try to go in and build that influence and that trust pretty quickly. But it's also really interesting because I find that in the leadership roles in marketing, most of them are men, and but they haven't actually sort of done all of the individual jobs and roles within marketing that would enable them to be a better leader. They've kind of been able to jump faster than women, unfortunately. It's changing a little bit, but I think on average, most of the CMOs out there, again, have been male. And that's just sort of the nature of business in general. Most of the leaders in organizations, most of the boards of directors are men, and it's just us trying to like get in there. And again, I think that this book, trying to help people gain influence, again, doesn't matter who you are, should really help with that.
This book really does help, as well as building relationships in the company.
Yeah.
Sales and marketing is a huge pressure point. And Christina gave a great story in the book. I don't know if I'm pushing it too far off the highway.
Oh no, this is great.
Get the book and read it, because not only will you learn how to negotiate through working for men as a woman, but you'll also learn how to work with salespeople who are antagonistic towards marketers naturally in B2B companies.
Or engineers who are not as socially adept as other people, for example. And so again, the whole key point of the book is to build that trust and influence, and it does go back to building the relationships. So in terms of somebody's asking about learning the tools and technologies, and that's a great question. I think that the main tools that you will be using are going to be, again, what's called a marketing automation tool and a customer relation management, a CRM tool. And the two big ones are Marketo for marketing automation. There's a bunch of them out there. And then Salesforce for the CRM. And then there's just a ton of others that you'll see as well. But if you understand sort of the underlying concepts of the marketing automation tool, which basically is to capture the lead that you are hopefully the lead that you are targeting, and then qualifying and nurturing them along a path until they're at a point where sales can then take those and make the sale. And at that point, that lead goes into that CRM, and then the sales team will take over from there, and they'll continue to nurture it the way that they need to. And then from there, it'll actually go to that customer support and success team, where they'll actually manage that. And it doesn't matter if they're a consumer, like they're buying, Lucky Brand jeans, you still want to market to that person because they've already purchased your jeans. Or if you're, B2B selling, Oracle, then you'll have that as well. But I think that's those are the two sort of main kind of concepts of tools that you'll use. And again, there's various workflows and ways that they work. And every company is going to have different tools. Like you might have, Marketo with Zoho, or you might have HubSpot and HubSpot only, or you might have HubSpot and some other CRM. And so less in terms of understanding those specific companies and tools themselves, but understanding those concepts that those tools provide for you. The others that are out there right now that I think are going to be more significant as you guys go into the workforce are what's called ABM, account-based marketing tools. And basically what that is it's really focused on one-to-one marketing, if you will. And again, these are really important if you're a huge company and you're selling like, $1 million product or solution, because what those will do is those will help you, again, understand. We'll talk a little bit about the customer journey in a second, but it'll help you understand all of those people in that buyer's journey so that you can then market to them specifically. So, for example, with Autodesk, I was focused on media and entertainment industry, and so very much on graphics. And so there was probably 10 different specific audiences we were selling to for that product that we had. And again, it included the CEO, the CFO, it included graphic artists, it included producers, it included VFX supervisors, all these different people that are part of developing CGI for movies and for games. And all of those people, we need to influence them. We need to help them understand what it is that product has in there. And so an account-based marketing tool would then recognize all of those different individuals and market to them specifically with specific content and everything. And so that kind of takes the onus and all of the work off of you and puts it on some of it's AI based machine learning and and sort of automated systems. And so that's another tool that I think is really critical for B2B organizations as well. So here's another question. What is my degree in? And the first graduated college, did you have a career plan set up? That's a great question. So I always knew that I wanted to go into business and law. And I actually started off as a business student as an undergrad, but then I knew I was going to go get my MBA and my JD at some point as well. And a lot of the courses that I was taking, unless you're very specialized, weren't going to transfer over, and I was going to need to take, a lot of accounting and finance and econ over again. And so what I decided to do was get a communications degree. So my undergraduate degree is in communications with an emphasis in Asian cultures as well, because Japan and China were big when I was getting my undergraduate degree. And I got that from University of Oregon. And then I went to Santa Clara University for my MBA and JD, which I never finished my law degree. And I can still go back and do that. But for me, once I finished the MBA, I really it was one of those things where I knew I wanted to go into business, and I knew I wanted to go into marketing, and I knew I wanted to be a leader, an executive. I just didn't know sort of what that path was, and ended up, it was actually my second startup that I worked at was with Elon Musk. It was Elon's first startup called Zip2, and that just really opened my eyes. I mean, you hear all kinds of different things about him, but for me, it was just fascinating working with him so early on in my career, because the way he looked at things was different than anything I had ever seen before and anything I've seen since. In his mind, everything is possible. And I remember him talking about building a spaceship. We'd be at lunch and he'd be like, I'm going to build a spaceship. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. That's great. My aspirations are a little lower than that, but you go build a spaceship. And again, there was nothing that couldn't be done if you put your mind to it, put resources in it, and again, sort of really had everybody aligned and on the same page. And that was really sort of an important lesson for me. And then just kind of watched him as a leader, and I've watched him grow over the years as well. But yeah, for me, it was always about business and sort of marketing, and definitely running businesses and companies over time. Again, just didn't really know what that path would look like. And honestly, I was kind of naive. I thought I could just go in and sort of take over and stuff. And it took a long time to get to the point where I had the background, I had the experience that I could build that trust and influence. And now I can go, people hire me to go into their companies and review their go-to-market strategies and build it for them, because I have that background. And again, I think one of the things for you guys when you start your career, you might think that you want to go into advertising, and then you're like, no, this isn't for me, or this isn't an area that that I excel at. Or you might find that the branding is something that's just amazing and you absolutely love it and you want to stick with that. So just be open to the different types of roles that are in marketing and learn and grow and sort of see what you feel really good about. So to Tom's point and to the question about male, female, and things like that, it really is about building influence. And so how the heck do you do that, right? The first component to that is that go-to-market strategy, and really understanding again what your role is as part of that strategy. The second one, which we talked a little bit about, was the customer journey, and understanding that journey that the customer is taking. And we'll deep dive into these a little bit as well. And then recognizing what I call touch points. And these are all of the different areas that you as a marketer are touching within the organization and within that customer journey. And then building what I call a map of influence. I used to literally build this. It was a spreadsheet. It wasn't pretty, but it literally was a tool that helped guide me in terms of what I should be focusing on, who I should be talking to, what I should be talking to them about. And so that really is the book. The book goes into a lot of detail about it, but to kind of make it a little, dumbing it down a little bit. Again, the go-to-market really is all about understanding your role in that overall corporate strategy. And it's okay, like if you're just starting out, I would go to my boss's boss, managers, the CEO, and really like try to understand what that strategy is and what your current role is in there and how you can help with that. And it really is all about aligning everybody in the organization to that go-to-market strategy. I have a podcast. It actually hasn't launched yet, but it's the head of go-to-market strategy for Cisco and a product person from Google and myself. We're all the co-hosts for this. And Shri and I, he's the go-to-market strategist at Cisco. We have this conversation all the time. Who should own the go-to-market strategy? And I think marketing should, and he thinks product should. So we have these interesting discussions and debates. And it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, as long as your company has that go-to-market strategy and everybody is working towards that. But again, like how do you as a marketer fit in with that go-to-market strategy is really important. And again, it doesn't matter like what your role is. If you're just starting out, your job is to help the company get to usually again a revenue goal. And so that's why it's critical for you to understand what your role is and how it fits in with go-to-market strategy. And again, I feel that marketing should own go-to-market strategy, but there'll be plenty of debates for a long time about that. In terms of the customer journey, I think about it in two ways. One is sort of the different phases that the customer goes through, and then the different stages within that phase. So I'll just kind of do a little bit of a deep dive here. So getting about the customer journey, I think about it as the product. You have a product or solution that's been built, and that's what you're trying to sell. And then you have marketing that comes in and tries to position that and get people excited about whatever that product or solution is. And then sales will take it from there and hopefully sell folks on that. And then you have customer engagement. And again, this could be customer support. It can be somebody who's actually, again, if it's like a B2B or a software solution, somebody's actually implementing it for you. And so those are kind of, to me and the organizations I work with, this is a pretty standard customer journey. This is a great question. It says, how do you convince the company that you're working for that marketing should lead the go-to-market strategy? So that has to do with, actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about this because the way I think about it is marketing is involved in all of these phases, right? Sure, lead life cycle, this is very clearly marketing owns this, right? This is the brand, this is PR, this is your program, social media, all the content you're creating, your website. That's all marketing right here. But what I'm trying to help people understand is how can marketing influence product? How can marketing influence the buyer's journey and what sales is doing? And how can we help customer success and customer engagement really make sure that our customers are successful and happy? And so that's really how I go about making sure that marketing, if not owns the go-to-market strategy, we're very much involved in it. The book goes into a lot of examples of how I'll come into an organization and marketing is not even part of that go-to-market strategy itself, let alone owning it. Oftentimes we're just handed like, okay, this is our strategy, now go implement it. And marketers and marketing should have more say in it because we're the ones who really understand all of these pieces that go into it. So if we think about, I'm going to skip this part here because I think I want to get to, let's see here. Yeah, let me go to this part here. So in order to influence, you need to think again about all of the different things that marketing is touching. So if we think about that customer journey, from a product standpoint, again, we don't own the product. We're not building the product. We don't own the roadmap. We're not in charge of the engineers building it or prioritizing or anything like that. And I certainly don't know how to code. But there are things that marketing can either owns or can help with product. One is the actual launches of the product. product, right? We're responsible for getting it to market and marketing that. We own the website, which is where a lot of prospects or customers are coming and are leaving feedback on the product. We might even own the chat that somebody is like, typing in like, these are my issues that I have. And so we can recognize a lot of these issues that product is having, whether it's friction or features and functionality that our customers or prospects are looking for. These are things that marketing can see and can help guide product on. The other thing that we can help product on is our brand. It's really important. Sometimes, folks in both an engineering and product, they get a little siloed with what it is that they're building, and they can kind of forget about like what the company stands for, what our mission is, what our branding is, what we're supposed to be focused on, who our target is. And so marketing can really help product understand that better. We also own what's usually called Net Promoter Score, NPS. You probably have all seen it when you get that thing that pops up and it says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend? That's a Net Promoter Score. And that's the only question they ask. And marketing usually is the one that owns that because it's on the website or it's coming from an email that we're sending out. And that really helps. That should be helping product define how happy people are with the product. So, and again, that's just how marketing can help product. We can also help sales by providing them with content that's critical, developing the right collateral, helping them set expectations with customers better. There's all kinds of ways that we can help sales. And again, we talked about this, there can sometimes be friction with sales. I kind of feel like if everything is going right and we're hitting our revenue numbers, then sales gets credit for it. If we're not, marketing gets blamed for it. And there should never really be friction between marketing and sales. Our job as marketers is to enable sales. But oftentimes there's some misunderstanding there, especially when it comes to what we call the quality of the lead. Sales is always like, this lead sucks, and we're like, well, maybe it's because you don't know how to sell. Sometimes you get into little matches like that. But again, at the end of the day, we need to work together and we need to help sales do their job. And then marketing can also help customer success because we can help them, whether it is amplifying our customers by giving them opportunities to do case studies, or having VIP events, or having some. I've done this with a lot of companies where we do like deep diving training. So you do sort of like minimal training to get people up and running, but then once they're customers, like how can you turn them into better, whatever their role is, do better at that. I think it's interesting because I was having a conversation on a podcast a couple of days ago. I think the two roles that are really hard for me as a CMO to get are product marketing. And those are the folks that are going to help. They're going to work really closely with product and help define some of that messaging and understand pricing and sort of like feature functionality and what would go in a bundled package, for example, and customer marketing. And again, those are the folks, you've already won them. They're already your customers. How can you keep them, or how can you get them to expand, or how can you get them to buy more? And those are two roles that I think are really critical, that are really hard for a CMO to actually get approved and get the budget for. But that really is, again, this is all about what the book is talking about, is identifying all of these areas that marketing is touching on a daily basis. And again, if we think about like, from the standpoint of product, like, we own the website, we run programs. From the standpoint, again, of sales, we actually help sales with nurture emails, and we can help write for them. We can do things like build ROI calculators and comparison sheets and things like that. And so, again, if you think about all of these different touch points that marketing already is part of and already owns and is already contributing to, but how can we do them working more collaboratively with these different organizations? And that's how we build that trust. That's how we build that influence. And that's how we own, to the point of the question, that go-to-market strategy, or lead it at least. And then at the end of the day, I like to say that's how we conquer the world. But it takes some time to get to that point. So that's the grit marketing method. That is the map of influence. I know it's a lot. But again, I think if you have the opportunity to take a look at the book and start implementing things, this takes time too. This isn't something that you could do overnight. It would probably take somebody who has been in marketing for 10, 15 years, probably a good 6 to 12 months to actually implement it. But if you start off thinking about these things when you start your career, it'll just be easier as you grow and hopefully have a lot more influence. So those are my slides. I know it was a lot, but I'm happy to answer any questions about marketing.
It's awesome if you'll stop sharing the screen so everybody pops up back on.
Let me do that. Done.
All right.
And I was like, yeah, that's an intensive marketing, quarter right there in 45 minutes.
Yeah, that was wild and fantastic. Anybody have any questions?
Let's see. It says, how can a small business begin to implement this strategy? That's a great question, and I get this a lot. I get it a lot from solopreneurs and small businesses, as well as some of the larger companies. So let's say if you are, let's take a solopreneur or an entrepreneur, right? Like you are basically starting a company, you've created a product and you're everything in that company. You're the CEO, you're the CMO, you're the salesperson. And so hopefully you can influence yourself. But as you start to think about whether you're bringing in some consultants, or even if you're looking at your customers, or you're trying to influence people in the industry, some thought leaders, how can you really sort of position that? And, to Tom's point, a lot of it is just, it's kind of common sense. It's about building relationships. And so again, if you're an entrepreneur or solopreneur, who do you need to be influencing and working with, or who can help you sort of elevate or level up what you're doing, and then start building relationships with them. It doesn't have to be manipulative, or there should be true relationships that you want to have with people. But it really is about how, what do you have that you can help them with, and what do you need from them? I think the other key thing is that it's really important to think about the ask. Like, it's okay to ask people for things, right? And they'll either say yes or no, or they might not, maybe a quid pro quo or whatever. But never be afraid to ask for help and ask for what you want. For a small business, it's similar. You're going to have more people in your organization. You'll probably have, let's just say, anywhere from 10 to 50 employees at that point. And again, you can still influence them and have that alignment. I think that's really the critical piece, is to have that alignment and collaboration with all the different organizations. I'll give you a couple of examples. I was working on, this was at Autodesk, and we had a product, and I was going to have the opportunity to launch a product it's the biggest show of the year, and it only happened once a year. It was called SIGGRAPH, and everybody in the industry was there, like everybody, 500,000 people online and virtually in there. And if we didn't launch it at this show, we were going to have to wait a full year to launch it. And that actually would have impacted us by about $50 million in revenue. And so I went to product and I was like, hey, you know what? Can we get this feature out in time so that we can either, or at least tease it up? Do we have enough that I can talk about it at this show? And they're like, nope, absolutely not. We've got nothing to show. We're not going to build it. And it was really frustrating for me, because that's $50 million in revenue, which is, I don't know, it's pretty significant to me. And so, what I realized was, like, to them, they had their roadmap, they had their priorities, and they kept pushing back, saying that engineering couldn't do it. So I went and talked to the head of engineering, and I was like, hey, dude, this is the deal. And I told him, like, in context, like, this is what I'm looking for. This is why I'm looking for it. This is why this timeline is critical. And this is the revenue that we will be able to make if we are able to launch it at this show. And he was like kind of looking off in the distance. And I was like, God, is he even listening to me right now? And I was like, hey, so what do you think? And he looked at me and he's like, you know what? He's like, nobody, and he'd been doing this for like 20 years. He's like, nobody has ever like made the connection to me, like how much revenue my team is responsible for bringing in. And it kind of blew me away. And I'm like, well, you guys built products, so kind of like all of revenue, right? But like in their minds, he'd never thought about it from that perspective. And so, and with the context that I'd given him, he was like, you know what, let me go back, let me talk to my team. They reprioritized the roadmap and were able to get me the feature that I needed. We were able to launch it. And within the 12-month sales cycle that we had, we were able to meet that $50 million in revenue, that extra $50 million. And so that's why it's really, really important, again, to build those relationships and have those conversations and just collaborate more, be super open about what the objectives are. And again, it kind of goes to knowing what everybody else's goals are and having that empathy, right? Because I get that his team was, they were overtaxed for sure. And again, what this meant was not, I tried to make it so that it wasn't additional work. We just reprioritized what they had. So it meant that some features and functionality got pushed out a year actually. But those were things that weren't going to net me 50 million in revenue. And so just building those relationships, again, doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur, small business, large company, just building those relationships is what's really critical.
Awesome. Anybody else have a question? Let me ask you this, Christina. If they buy the book, let's say they get the book as a Christmas present, they put it on their list and Santa brings them the book. And they read the book and they've got some questions. Yeah. Could they email you and maybe you would consider clearing any questions they might have?
Yeah, and I'm happy, like if you want to talk about how to network, how to get a job with this. I did this with my niece. She's a junior at San Jose State in the entrepreneurship program there. And she was like, I don't even know what these jobs do. Like, I have no idea like what a career in this would look like or what this looks like or anything. And so if you have any questions like that, feel free. I'll put my email in the chat, but you guys, you can also feel free to send it out to people. It's basically just my initials at my company. So yeah, feel free. Any questions you have, any help you need, just let me know. I'm happy to help.
All right, we'll take one more question. Again, Christina's been so gracious to do this, talking to us live from California, a couple hours behind us. I think it's early in the morning out there.
I get up pretty early, but.
So one more question before we say a goodbye, everybody. Anybody got a question? Put it in the chat box or take yourself off mute and just speak it out.
Yeah, okay, the next person who asks the question is going to get an autographed book. How about that?
Autographed copy of the book, quick.
How was your day?
That's a great question.
Who said that? Who said that?
That's the
Nicole.
Nicole wins the book. Nicole wins the book.
She's been in her Adirondack chair outside drinking her coffee or whatever she's got in there. My day is great. Again, I'm super lucky that I'm at a point in my career where I can pick and choose, who I want to work for, what I want to do. I'm actually starting to write my second book. I know, it's kind of crazy.
An exclusive. What's it going to be?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So it's going to be how to develop a go-to-market strategy, because I feel like that is something that is missing. And so it's going to take a lot of what's in Sway and turn it into, again, sort of this methodology for building that go-to-market strategy, especially from the standpoint of marketing. So,
and that is Nicole, definitely not only will you get solid gold.
I'll also send you a copy of the next book when that comes out in about a year or so.
I'll take it.
Nicole, send her an email so she knows what address to mail that to.
I will.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, Chris, that was absolutely phenomenal, Christina. I knew it would be. Your book is phenomenal. I tell my students, let's get that on Christmas lists. Christmas, I want the Sway book. Yeah. You're going to read it and you're going to reach out to Christina and she'll respond to any questions you have. And well, that's all we have for today.
I know it was a lot, but
it was awesome.
As you kind of get through your career, some of these things might come back to you, and so hopefully it was helpful.
Now, if you could send me the slides, I'll send those out to the students.
Oh yeah, I'll do that for sure.
Awesome. All right, Everybody say thank you as we say goodbye. Have a great day. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.